time. Apologies again for the delay. We're having some technical issues, but it's all settled. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Kady Sylla. I'm a senior advisor at KBFUS and wanted to personally welcome you at this webinar session titled Optimizing Stakeholder Engagement Through Events, which we're proud to collaborate on with the International Social Impact Institute and of course, facilitated by the one and only Liz Ngonzi. As I was mentioning before, my name is Kady, and I believe when we sent out the invitation, you had a chance to see my profile and my bios. I'm unfortunately not going to have a lot of time to go over that since we're pressed for time. What I wanted to kind of briefly do is go over, provide an overview of who we are at KBFUS, what we do, and how we might be able to work with some of you who already don't know about our services and our team members. So just briefly speaking, this is a very short version of things. For those of you who have not yet looked at our website or are not partnering with us yet, the King Baudouin Foundation United States, KBFUS for short, since that's a very long-winded way of naming us, is a 501c3 registered nonprofit in the United States that serves as a bridge, an intermediary institution between US donors and nonprofits overseas, predominantly focused on Africa and Europe, and now we're extending to Latin America. As you can tell from our website, as well as our content, we have geographic, cultural, and regional focus and expertise. Being dedicated to the African Philanthropic Network and philanthropic space in the United States, facilitating donor relationships and communications to make sure that US donors that are interested in social issues or causes in Africa do not face any barriers in supporting those. We facilitate the grants to African nonprofits. And similarly, African nonprofits that are interested in fundraising in the United States, I am here to advise them in the best way possible on how they can take advantage of our services and products. I have counterparts in Europe as well as Latin America. And I was just briefly mentioning, we enable US donors to support causes and nonprofits globally, again, with the focus on Africa, Latin America, and Europe. Inversely, we also enable for nonprofits to receive tax-deductible gifts from US donors without having to set up their own 501c3 and maintaining it as well. If you want to know more about our processes and structures as well as our services, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. We will be sharing all of the resources for this webinar as well as contacts for follow-up questions. But just briefly, we've been around for about 20 plus years, and have continued to contribute to impact the best that we can. And last year alone, part of that impact, last year alone, we facilitated about $80 million in grants to Africa and Europe. And this is expected to increase this year, given that we've added Latin America to our portfolio. Just briefly, in the past 3 years, that amount, thank you, Liz, the amount was $130. This is just to give you a sense of the breadth and depth of our philanthropic services and where we cover globally, as well as the strength of our database in terms of the donors that come to us looking for solutions to support their favorite causes. Next slide, Liz. Thank you. Part of these services, as I said, are very tailored to each nonprofits where we work, Africa, Europe again, and Latin America. One of these is a sponsorship program called American Friends Fund. As I had mentioned previously, this allows nonprofits around the world to benefit from US donor gifts that we also provide tax-deductible benefits for. So you don't have to set up your own 501c3, as I mentioned. If you're interested in the American Friends Fund and know how it works, please reach out to me at kady@kbfus.org. I would be more than happy to meet up with you to address any questions you might have about this process. But this is for a fiscal sponsorship program for those who might be interested in this in the space. The other services that we also provide is specifically donor-led. It's our donor advised funds. This is again to help enable donors to support their favorite causes overseas. And we host donor advised funds at KBFUS in order to ensure that donors can continue to support issues that they care about that are aligned with their mission and values, while also benefiting from the tax services that are allowed under US tax laws for nonprofits. Another thing that we also provide is support for or advised gifts. These are one-off gifts for US donors. There are no links for that because they're pretty rare. But in case you have any donors around the United States that want to support your issues or programs overseas and want to benefit from the tax deductions, you can put me in touch with them and we'll be able to facilitate that for them as well. And we have legacy funds. I would not go too much into that because that really isn't for this audience. But again, if you're interested, let me know, reach out to me by email, and we can certainly discuss in depth. What I wanted to highlight and what's relevant for this webinar is the way that we approach philanthropy at KBFUS. We collaborate with subject matter experts, and Liz Ngonzi, who is facilitating for us today at the International Social Impact Institute, has been an incredible facilitator for KBFUS. We've had the privilege to work with Liz for about 2 years or so now, and it's been, you will see it for yourself, but I can say personally that it's been a joy and an honor to be working with somebody who actually understands this space, knows what it is to be an entrepreneur, and can certainly provide practical tools and experiences to you. So I hope that whatever Liz shares today, even if you've gone through this before, you can find a way to see different angles that she can bring to this webinar. The other thing that we also do, of course, is centering and elevating local solutions. We are passionate, as an African personally, I'm passionate about local solutions taking place on the continent. And every one of us at KBFUS, the fund advisors, do the best that we can to spotlight some of these local solutions for US donors that are not familiar with grassroots engagements on the continent or around the world, and how best to support some of these solutions. So we do that through our communication packaging, we do that through our American Friends Fund, we do that through our e-news, different ways that we do this for sure. And then last but not least is building bridges. We do this through convening such as these, and as well as collaborations with other nonprofits around the world. And we also network a lot. So if we can, wherever we can, we advocate for our partners. That said, welcome again. We are proud and happy to have you here, and over to you, Liz. Thank you.
Thank you, Kady. It's been such an honor and pleasure to work with you. Well, with you over the last few months, of course, with KBFUS for last 2.5 or so years. I'm sure there are many people in the audience who participate in the program that we've done, but folks, just to let you know, if you want someone who's definitely going to advocate on your organization's behalf, Kady is the person who you want to go to. So highly recommend that if you haven't already spoken with her, that you go ahead and do so. And even if you already have a fund, get in touch with her and see how you might be able to increase the engagement with the KBFUS. So you have my bio, so I'm not going to really go into a lot. You can read the bio from the website. The bottom line is I've done this for a long time, and so I kind of know what I'm talking about, and I'm super excited to share this with you. Okay. Let's talk about what we're going to cover today. We're going to start with some examples from our own portfolio of optimizing stakeholder engagement through events. I'm going to then give you an overview of how to go ahead and optimize stakeholder engagement through events using processes and frameworks. And then I'm going to give you specific examples for how to go about doing so through virtual events. And then for those are in-person events using real case studies. And then we'll give you some time to ask questions and whatever takeaways that you've gotten from this. I want to hear from you what you got from the session. And we have tons of resources that we're going to share with you to be able to put this all into action. And so to the extent that we can, we will make this interactive, but with us having started a little bit late, I'm going to have to kind of let my colleague Ludmila sort of help me figure out when I might be able to stop a little bit and ask any questions. So go ahead and share them in the chat. And please also know that you have access to this presentation, which Ludmila has just copied the link into the chat for you to access, because we have links embedded in all of this. So you'll be able to access the links on your own so that you can do further study. Okay, so let's talk about some examples of optimizing stakeholder engagement through events. These are for in-person events, and I'll go into virtual events that we've done. So this is an example of a supporter cultivation breakfast that my firm years ago did for AMREF. For those of you who are not familiar with AMREF, it's the largest health development organization on the African continent. And at the time when they reached out to us, they were looking to engage the African diaspora. Not necessarily, it wasn't a fundraising event, it was really more of a supporter cultivation or friend-raising event. So we hosted the event at the Cornell Club here in New York City. And what's important is that this was the first time that they had a Secretary General who was from Ethiopia, as an African, a woman. And so we really wanted to not only have a venue that people could relate to, but we also wanted to integrate elements that felt African, and you'll see them later. But so this is an example of a supporter cultivation event that we hosted that was really focused on friend raising. We had about 40 people there. Another example is a sports themed gala dinner. We were contacted by an organization called Communities and Schools of New Jersey that had 9 weeks to be able to produce their gala. And it's very little budget and really not that many contacts. And frankly, I thought they really didn't have much of a prayer. The one thing I noticed though on their when I were doing research, I went onto their website and I noticed that on their board, for those of you who are Americans, you can appreciate this, on their board was the head of community relations for the New York Giants, which they had just won the Super Bowl. So I contacted him and I said, listen, they don't have a budget. Do you think we can host the event at the Stadium Club in Giant Stadium? I know it's been renamed since. And can you underwrite that? Because if we can do that, then we can make that happen. So not only did they hosted in the Stadium Club, and we chose to make it an event that was focused on their fans, because what we did was we had one player at each table, which if you're a football fan, that's a big deal. So we had one player at each table to sit with the guests, and we were able to raise about $100,000 for this. But another thing we were able to do was give them exclusive access to the locker room, which is actually smelly and pretty nasty, but it was cool for those who are huge fans. And then we were able to take them onto the field, onto the field, and we had the Super Bowl trophy they had just gotten. So people took photos with the trophy. So it was definitely an experience where we were tapping into the fans of the New York Giants to then connect them to the organization, because the organization really didn't have any sort of a database of its own. But what's important here is just understanding that sometimes where a situation may look impossible, you just have to dig and look for where the elements can come together. And it's okay if the donor starts out, or the attendee starts out not necessarily knowing anything about your organization. It's your job to really connect them once they get there. So that's an example of that. We go on to the next one. This is an example of a race, and I'm sure that many of you who do races, Susan G. Komen for the Cure is a big organization here in the US, and this is their New Jersey chapter. We helped produce the race, and what's fun about this is it's like you have thousands of people coming together, create different teams with whom they run, and we had little kids and all kinds of different folks involved in this, and it's the way that you can make this work financially is that you really have to place quite an emphasis on the sponsorship, but it's a really tremendous way to fundraise for an organization, and really fun and family oriented. And so with this, if you can see, these are women who they ran with the pink wigs. That's just kind of a way to make it fun. So that's an example. And then you've got high-end galas. This is again Susan G. Komen. It's the pink tie ball. The challenge here was that we wanted to have a ball for 1,500 people, and in New Jersey there isn't a venue that can accommodate 1,500 people. So what we ended up doing was going to the New Jersey Performing Arts Center, which is a beautiful space, doesn't accommodate 1,500 people, but we were able to erect a tent on their parking lot, and we shared the tent with 3 different galas so that we could accommodate. The cost is very, very high. So for 1 month, we had actually 4 galas. Each of the organization hosted their event a different week, and so we're able to share the costs together. So this is literally on a parking structure in a tent. And this was a gala that raised $1.5 million. And that's some of the little details of the things that you have to think about when you're kind of putting these events together. The next is an example of an event that we produced for when it's when I was the CEO of Africa Tikkun USA, we created the Africa Tikkun USA Legacy Gala. And what was really important about this was we wanted to honor folks who had been part of the organization for a long time and really supported the organization's young people in South Africa. And so one of the things I noticed when I was hired was that there was a woman a philanthropist out of Massachusetts, who supported the organization for many years, and she paid for a camp, and no one had really engaged her. And I decided that we needed to honor her because her husband's always the one who gets honored. He's the businessman, but she was the one who really did the philanthropic work. So not only did we honor her, I then subsequently took she and her husband to South Africa to actually participate in the camp that they had funded. So it was kind of like a combination of two, so the donor trip. And so they participated in the camp, and our team did such an amazing job of engaging them that her husband took 5,000 photos. And when we were done with the trip, they said, we want to create a yearbook for these young people as a Valentine's Day gift for them, which is going to be a few months later. And so we created a yearbook for them, and it was really a really spectacular thing for them. If you can even see when you have the slides, the foreword that they wrote, they really were in love with this. But most importantly, for fundraising efforts, this tripled their gift. And so that was really important. And I'm just trying to show you how different ways you can kind of engage your donors, but donor trips are really, really, really important if you can make those happen. So let's talk a little bit about just doing optimizing stakeholder engagement through virtual events. We had the honor and privilege of working with KBFUS last year on the African Resource Mobilization webinar series and brought in a number of other partners. I'm a huge, huge proponent of partners, whether they're financial partners or if they're marketing partners. The point is that you're able to leverage all the networks to be able to get more people to come and participate. So through this, I think we were able to reach 2,000 people all over the African continent, actually beyond, through this 5-part series. And so what was really important about this, again, were all the partnerships we brought together to make this happen. And then we brought in these incredible speakers that represented different parts of the during different parts of the philanthropic sort of space. But what I guess what I'm trying to share with you here is that this gave an opportunity for the nonprofits to showcase the work that we're doing, as well as the philanthropists to talk about what they how they support organizations. And this was a great way for KBFUS to engage its own sort of stakeholders. The next example is also related to KBFUS, and this is the event that we hosted in May of this year, and it served 3 different purposes. It was an online celebration of Africa Day, and then it was also an opportunity for Nelson Mandela University, which is one of KBFUS's partners and ours as well, to really tell about their story. I mean, they're a really incredible university that are creating education for a sustainable and socially just world. So we gave an opportunity to sort of share that story. And then, of course, because it's KBFUS, there was a fundraising element in that we were able to update their fundraising page, and I will talk about this later, so that people who may be interested could then subsequently support the organization. So Kady, I don't know if you want to say something, because you definitely, I mean, we partnered on this, so if you want to say anything.
Totally. So I think what I want to add to this in the context of this webinar session is the incredible work that your team pulled together in order to convey a very complex story about what Nelson Mandela University is and what it stands for and its legacy, because that's something that the university had challenges with. So the way you package this for them in order for the VC Mutua to be able to tell the story and inspire people, and how we set it up with different stakeholders in the room, those interested in social justice, those interested in higher education in Africa, just addressing everyone's needs at the same time, I thought was incredible. And the university certainly did a great job in sort of conveying who they are to people.
Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely. Thank you. And I think what's important, going back to the services that I'm not trying to put you on the spot here, Kady, but I think what was really important is that there was that spotlighting element that you mentioned, but also bringing together the networks. I think people need to understand that, like, you know, you may think that the KBFUS is like your partner to have this page, but it's a much more dynamic relationship you can have with them if you choose to do so. So I encourage you to do so. Sure. Thank you. These are just examples of educational conferences that you can do. This is the Giving Tuesday is one of our partners, and in fact, KBFUS was a partner to this event, and I spoke in it, and it was just a virtual conference to enable people to prepare for Giving Tuesday. The presentations are available, so you get to hear from Canva in terms of how to use their services for Giving Tuesday, how to use Facebook to activate your people on Giving Tuesday and the like. So this is again an event that was for nonprofit organizations who are these people's stakeholders to be able to more effectively use the platform Giving Tuesday. And then we just as a team recently produced the inaugural Youth Giving Summit online, which attracted about 2,000 people as well. It was a 3-part series in addition to a couple other elements that we integrated. And the whole point was not only to showcase each one of the organizations, so nonprofit organizations that we're connected to through the speakers, but also to create an opportunity for our partners, who are mostly nonprofit organizations, to be able to showcase their young people. So for instance, Giving Tuesday has Giving Tuesday Spark, which is a platform for young people who want to make a difference. And so there's 2 young people who spoke here are part of Giving Tuesday Spark. So we're able to give a platform for their folks to be able to participate and for their organizations to be spotlighted. So just different ways that you can use online. I'm a huge fan of online, and I think that COVID has made online engagement even more important than it was in the past. And I think that at the very least, organizations are going to be going to online and possibly hybrid events. And I don't think everything's going to really purely just be in person if you really want to be able to tap into global audiences and the like. So just wanted to bring that to your attention. So how do you do this, right? This is great. I can tell you all these different things. How do you actually make this happen? Well, good news is I teach, so I'm going to teach you how to do it. The very first thing I want you to kind of absorb, if you don't forget it, if you don't remember anything else from today, this is what I want you to remember. This is one of my very favorite quotes from the late Dr. Maya Angelou. She says, "I've learned that people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel." When you have events, folks, how you make people feel is so important, right? And that is a matter of, just in terms of your programming, like just is your programming like organized? Is it easy for people to register? Are you, how are you engaging people? Because if people, people will kind of forgive you, their technical difficulties and things like that. But as long as you sort of, kind of address them, or you sort of let them know, like even for us, we had technical difficulties, but Kady said, we're very sorry, we're really happy to welcome you and the whole thing. So it's sort of like it helps you to overcome that bit of a challenge. But that how you make people feel is the most important part of this, because people won't necessarily realize what it is that you've done, but they're like, I really like those folks, or I really like that event, because you place an emphasis on that. So it's really about being intentional. And I'm going to show you how to be intentional about that. Okay. All right. So let's go on to the sort of 5 key elements that you want to think about when you're this process that you're really trying to manage an event. So it's plan, organize, market, produce, and evaluate. And here's some of the questions you want to ask yourself. So what are our goals, and what type of event will help us achieve them? When should we hold the event? Who's paying? Who's paying makes a very big difference, because if you're paying, it's very different from if you're getting a donor or whoever it will determine the parameters of what you could do. So for instance, I was giving the example of that event with the New York Giants. If they didn't have the New York Giants, we probably wouldn't have worked on the event, but they would have had a much smaller event because they didn't have someone else who was underwriting it. So it's important to know that. And what is the budget? How many people do we expect? And who are those specific people we want? And where do we want to host this event? Like, what is the venue that we're what are the venues that we're geographically or in venues that we're considering? Once you get to the organization part, is what activities do we want to have during the event? Is this supposed to be fun? Is this like supposed to be like a very serious event? But you've got to think intentionally about what those activities need to be, given whoever it is that you're inviting and the intentions of the event. You also need to know how much space you'll need. Are you going to be feeding people? So if you're feeding people, what kind of requirements do you have for that? And then what type of services do you need to help to make this a success? Like a photographer, a videographer, live streaming, whatever that may be. So those are some of the things you ask yourself during the organization part of this. Once you kind of have that laid out, then you can start marketing. And then you want to think about, how are we generating revenue? Are we Do we need to get sponsorship packets developed so we can get those out? Are we selling? Is this a ticket generating? You want to use tickets for people to attend, or is this an event that we're completely providing to people for free? So you have to think about that. And then who do we want to attract to the event? How much time do we have to communicate to them? Because your marketing time frame is going to determine what the tactics or the channels you can use, which brings you to the channels that are best to attract the particular attendees that you're looking to engage with. So it might be maybe social media, email. Some organizations do printed invitations. So it's just a matter of what works for your organization and where you're located. And then once you get to the point of producing the event, you want to think about, okay, who has RSVP'd? Did they make any special requests that we need to be able to accommodate? How are we going to raise additional funds during the event? Like your fundraising, if this is a fundraising event, doesn't happen only when your people are for the tickets or sponsorships, but during the event, you can do live auctions, you can do silent auctions. There are a lot of different ways. So you want to make sure that you're really taking advantage of that. And I'll give you a tip. If the event is a corporate event where corporations pay for tables and they have their employees come, the employees who come haven't paid anything, so don't leave that money on the table. Make sure the employees have a way to maybe do a raffle, to be able to do a live auction, silent auction, whatever. Never leave that money on the table. And I know it sounds crass, but listen, this is fundraising, so it is what it is. Because I can tell you, I used to work in corporate and I used to do a lot of the dinners. I had no idea what the events were about. But the company would say, hey, we have a table, come. And like, if someone said to me, would you pay $100 for a raffle ticket? I would pay it. So just think about that. And then when the event has happened, who attended, you want to make sure that you sort of have that list, and that you have created, that you have captured memorable moments. So you want to make sure that you have some way of taking photos or any screenshots, or if it's a virtual event, you want to make sure that you have any kind of quotables that you can then share later, because you always want to think about the event that you're doing today is setting up for your marketing and for your engagement later as well. So it's about what can you take from this particular event and use it in the future. And then once you're done, you need to evaluate. You want to think about, how did things go? You have some kind of a debrief. What did people enjoy the most about it? What did they enjoy? Maybe you want to get some feedback through a survey if that makes sense. And then what can we change for the next time? And that's really kind of the things that you want to think about as you're producing your event. And of course, when you're doing it virtual versus in person, some of these things will vary, but for the most part, this is what you want to think about. The next thing is understanding the various types of support that you can get for your event, right? Now, most people go to financial sponsorship, which is great. If you get financial sponsorship, that's amazing. But you know what? Volunteers are also important because labor is expensive. And so I always feel like if you can get, let's say if you're running a school, or if you have beneficiaries or folks who or even just your board members, you want to have volunteers maybe doing your registration, make sure that they're trained, or maybe serving as ambassadors or whatever it may be. But volunteers are really, really good. And those are great ways for you to start engaging corporates, is through volunteers from their companies. In-kind donations. Never underestimate the value of in-kind donations, because I'll give you an example. When we did the Africa Tikkun Legacy Gala, USA Legacy Gala, I was connected to Delta Airlines, and they came on as a partner, as actually a sponsor. They didn't give us cash. What they did was they flew 4 of our young people and their chaperone from South Africa to the US, which is thousands of dollars. And they also donated 5 travel packages, first-class travel packages to us, which is an additional thousands of dollars, but it didn't quote unquote cost them anything. So that was super valuable, because then we were able to package those travel packages as part of those travel things as part of a larger packages for auctioning. So that was super valuable. So think about that. And then we're talking about the types of supporters. You want to just think about what their motivation are. So individuals, people like you and I, typically they're going to want to either believe in the mission and or have a connection, because maybe they know someone in your organization, or maybe because they have somehow benefited from your organization or the like. So the way that you're going to appeal to them is coming from from that understanding. If you've got a foundation that does actually support an event, it's not typical, it's typically maybe a smaller family foundation that may support your event, then it's really going to be about mission alignment. So when you're communicating to them, you need to understand that. With government or any multilateral agency, if they want, whether it's local or state or national, they're really going to be looking for the mission alignment, but a community connection. So if, let's say, if it's you're going to reach out to government, they have to know that what you're doing is in an area where they're serving. Otherwise, there really isn't going to be much of an interest, and that also applies to multilateral agencies such as UNDP. And then if you're going to say an impact investor, mission alignment is important, as well as marketing benefit. This is where marketing benefit becomes very important, which is the same with corporations. So, and what I mean by marketing benefit is they want their logo, website, event, all these different places. And I'm going to show examples to you for those of you who haven't necessarily done this in the past, but they're going to want their name everywhere. They're going to want to be in a press release. They're going to be in an article. They're going to want to get that visibility, and much more so than any of these other folks. So it's important to know that. And also that they're not going to support you if they don't do business in the areas where, in the markets that you serve. So also understand that. I wanted to give you tons of resources in terms of ideas, creative ideas for events. So these are 30 virtual and hybrid event fundraising ideas for nonprofits. And then this is 48 fundraising ideas to add to your nonprofit's calendar. So these are more kind of in-person and some online event type opportunities. These are virtual and hybrid events. They're really great resources because we're always looking for ideas. So I figured that would be helpful for you. And they apply to different contexts, because I also recognize the fact that some of you are here in the US, some of you are I believe, in Belgium, and we have some folks in Italy. We have quite a number of people from the African continent, including Eswatini, South Africa, Kenya, Uganda, and welcome to you. And I think we have someone as far as Australia. So I want to make sure that we have some resources that can be relevant within your own geography. All right, so let's move on to the to sort of what does a sample marketing campaign look like? And I do it this way because I want you to understand that it's kind of a cycle that you go through. At the core of all of this is optimizing your participants' experience, period, end of story. Like, always let that be the thing that drives what you're doing. And then what happens is you start off by creating some kind of a project overview, right? So you want to understand, where are we trying to go? What does our budget look like? What is the timeline? What is the purpose? All those questions I showed you earlier, you want to ask them in that sort of project overview. And that's what you share with whoever the different stakeholders are. And then you want to start building what the event's going to look like. And when I say visual prototype, if it's an in-person event, you probably would work with your venue to look at how would you lay this out? Is it classroom style? Is it going to be are you going to have a gala? So it's, what kind of tables and all that. You want to see what this is going to look like, but also you want to see how this is going to look like in terms of the event, like the way that the event progresses for the number of hours folks are with you in person or online, and then start thinking about any elements you want to create. So slides, videos that you need to have made and stuff. Start thinking about them early on, because that stuff takes a while. And then you want to create a communications plan, right? And that communications plan will enable, and in that you want to also include your marketing partners, because I told you partners are very, very important. And you, in that communications plan, you want to definitely make sure that you're talking about, what kind of communications you're going to do. If you're going to have any kind of, let's say if you're doing social media campaigns, you want to make sure that you have like your graphics and messaging and stuff that you want partners to share all in this plan, and the timing when they need to share it, so that it's easy for them to go ahead and support you in terms of your marketing. And then you also want to make sure that if you're going to use any kind of an online platform, whether it's Zoom or whatever the other ones are out there, that you've already selected that vendor so that you can start doing the development necessary to get things going. And of course, you need a venue if you're going to be in person, because you have to tell people where they're going. Another thing you want to think about is where you're going to market this event. So in these days, maybe it's a website, maybe it's a page on your website, or maybe you're using one of the event marketing platforms that are out there, or you're designing some kind of an event landing page because of the platform you're using, but you want to sort of design that piece. And then, of course, if you're doing some fundraising, and you should be thinking about fundraising all the time anyway, make sure that you work on the development of your fundraising page. In this case, it would be your KBFUS Network for Good fundraising page. Make sure that's done, because you want to make it easy for people to support you in whatever way that they want to. And then you begin your email marketing and your social media marketing, if that's going to be part of what you're doing. And if you're doing any print, if you're doing traditional mailings, you can do that as well. I'm not big on using paper, but that's really up to you. And then again, that people may not think about this, but speaker prep and then MC, photographer, video prep is part of your marketing, because whatever your speaker says is part of telling people the story of your organization. It's helping people to connect with what the organization's all about. So you want to be very intentional about what people are saying. The same applies to the MC, but also to your photographer and videographer. You want to make sure that you let them know the purpose of the event, what you want them to photograph, and if you have specific people who need to be photographed, like your honorees or your board members, whatever, you let them know who those folks are and schedule time in advance of the event or early in the event, so that you can get those photographs taken maybe in front of a step and repeat banner or something like that. So very important that you're intentional about that, because those photographs will be useful to you in future marketing, right? Remember I said you always have to be thinking about how this event can support you for the future. Then once that's done, you want to think about your thank you emails. Very important to always send a thank you email and do any kind of social media posts and event, and that you may be able to put out there. If you want to do a post-event press release, whatever it is that works for you, you definitely want to make sure that you're using the photos you have. You have some quotes that you took from the event that you can share with folks, and you do some kind of an event report. Now, the great thing is if you're doing a virtual event, you can take video clips from the event. You can share and say, so-and-so said this, and you share the video clip. It's a very engaging way for people to connect with what happened at the event, and then also to share the video thereafter. So just some things, but these are some basic kind of things you want to think about in terms of marketing an event that you have. So let's talk about that guest experience that you want to create. And I think I mentioned to you that you have to be intentional. So I want you to think about how a person experiences your event. So the very beginning, it's the event discovery. This is that marketing piece. So they're going to learn about your event because you sent them an email, you sent them a WhatsApp message, they went to your website, maybe you invited them to a LinkedIn event, whatever it is, they have to learn about the event somehow. And you want to make sure that however they're learning about the event, that it's very consistent in terms of branding. It's very easy for people to engage with you and for them to be able to connect with the organization. Because if you kind of botch this, that gets them to no, not to yes, right? So you want to think about that. And then when they get to the next step, it's the event registration. You want to make it easy. You want to make sure that you're sending them a confirmation and a reminder, so it's easy for them to be able to show up and do what you need them to do. And even in those confirmations or even the reminder message, you can start providing them with an experience, and I'm going to share with you how we did that in one of our events. But definitely do that, because people forget. We've got so much going on in the world that sometimes things fall through the cracks. Of course, if someone's paying, they're going to remember. And then when someone arrives, how you manage that in terms of like someone there to welcome them. Is everything neat? Is there like what kind of reception area do you have, or what does everything feel like? What does the venue feel like? And even online, you can manage how people enter into your event. Like when we did the event with Nelson Mandela University, and for Nelson Mandela University with KBFUS, we had people come in to listening to music from the university's choir, and so that it was a celebration, so they could already experience that and feel that. So you want to think about how you make that really special for folks, and then you want to plan out the program or the event in a way that you think about every single detail. We do everything down to the minute, so that every single minute is accounted for. Now, of course, you have to be able to pivot if things go a certain way, but the bottom line is you want to have a flow and a sequence of things that are supposed to be done at a certain time in a certain way. The next is that so that people know that, you know, what to expect, and they know that things run smoothly for them. And then when they leave, you want to make sure there's something that they're going to, you know, if it's in person, that you're giving them some kind of like, you know, you're giving them maybe like a goodie bag or some kind of an item for them to leave with, or even just maybe that if you have something coming up, you may even want to have a flyer for whatever it is that you want them to participate in. Like, so for instance, let me give you an example. When we did the pink tie ball that I showed you earlier, that event was in October, and then the race that we were doing that I showed you as well was the following, I believe, May. And what we did was, because the event was in October, it was cold. What we had were, we set up a hot chocolate station while people were waiting for the cars to be with valet, and we had cups printed up that said "See you at the race" with the URL for the race, so that they could already start thinking about the race, because those are the same people we're going to come to ask them to participate in the race. So you can actually tie events together in that way as well. And also giving them hot chocolate while they're waiting and it was cold was a nice touch for them to feel like, oh, they didn't forget about me at the end. And then the next thing is, when the event is over, you want to definitely make sure that the person is given a thank you note, or there's some sort of follow-up for them to see. People love seeing themselves in photos, so if you can create some kind of an online album, that's also really, really nice. People love that stuff, especially the honorees, if you have any. And of course, you want to do a report for your team and for your partners who participate in this event with you. All right, I'm going to stop here for a second because Ludmila tells me I have a little bit of time. So before I go into giving you the specifics around this process I just shared with you for virtual events and in-person events, I want to hear if anybody has any questions they want to ask. And maybe Kady, you can maybe let me know if there are any questions that came up.
There are no questions that came up yet in the Q&A, but I personally have a question.
Sure.
What I actually appreciate about the way you laid that out just now is this African proverb. I don't know if it's an African proverb, but they say that if you want to do it, you know, like if you want to do it alone, go something.
Oh, yeah. If you want to go fast, go
right.
Go
exactly.
Yeah.
If you want to go fast, go alone. Thank you. And if you want to
go far, go together.
Do more, go together. Right. And I think in the context of event organizing, what I think about often are how are the different opportunities, what are the different opportunities that nonprofits can use to collaborate together on events, like on hot issues, like gender equity, cancer awareness, and so on and so forth.
Yes.
Giving the limited resources that many grassroots nonprofits have in kind of pulling all of this together by themselves. So something to maybe, my question is, can you flesh that out a little bit?
Sure. So that's a really good one. So we actually did an event with 3 boys and girls clubs that each had different. So one had a good mailing list. The other one had like I don't know, maybe stronger brands. I forget what the different ones, but none of them had the budget to do the event themselves. So we did Cruise for a Cause together. That we brought the 3 of them together, so that was easier for them to manage. And what it was is, you know, you have to share mailing lists. You have to be willing to kind of build the committee together. Committees are very important for events like that, fundraising events, because the committees help you to reach to more people, and they also make sure that you have some minimum amount of fundraising that is done. But it also makes sure that you don't have to take on all the responsibility as one small organization, but you can kind of have different folks who do different pieces. So I definitely believe that it's important to think about coming together. I love what you were saying around the theme. So maybe in your particular community, it might be all the cancer charities, or it might be all the arts charities, or, you know, if you're, you know, whatever that may be. And I'm going to share with you a link later on in the resources for international days. So like UN International Days, or you can look in your particular country, because if you create an event around a specific day, like for instance, October 11th is International Day of the Girl. And so if you are an organization that works with the girl child, and maybe you find other organizations or community that do the same, you can actually do something on that day together, right? So you're tapping into a larger kind of a movement or a day to be able to activate your different stakeholders. And if you're promoting it on social media, your event can be discovered higher, because if you use the hashtag related to that day, more people can discover what you're doing. So I really like bringing folks together, because then you don't have to cover all the costs yourself, or even just more importantly, or just equally as important, if you have a small team, you can spread the work out between among a number of different teams. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, sure, no problem.
One of our partners, hi Lydia, welcome. Thank you for being here. Lydia has a question about organizing a joint event. I'm guessing that's with you. Lydia, feel free to come in, but she is asking how to organize a joint event and what are the cost implications. Lydia, do you want to come in for that?
I don't think they can speak, right?
You're right, they can't speak. Okay, so
Yeah.
Lydia is interested in knowing, Lydia is definitely interested in knowing how to organize a joint event with you, I'm guessing. Lydia, I will follow up with you individually and share Liz's contact details for follow-up, okay?
Okay, thanks.
I'm guessing that's a possibility for sure.
Sure, and I think Ludmila can also put my contacts in the chat. I think it's also in the presentation, but sure, happy to chat with you about that. But I definitely believe, if you haven't gotten it, I'm all about partnering, because you can't really, and to Kady's point about the proverb, you're very limited when you're trying to do things on your own, but you want to really leverage and bring in other folks and make sure that everybody's benefiting, right? It can't just be about you're the one benefiting, nobody else is. But certainly thinking about partners, thinking about different stakeholders you can engage to do this is really, really smart move, because they can be quite events are quite taxing on anybody. Okay, so let's continue on to I'm going to continue on, and I'm going to show you specific case studies from our work of how to optimize stakeholder engagement through virtual events. And we're going to use the case study first. We're going to use the one from the Nelson Mandela University event, which we did with KBFUS. And Kady, if you want to chime in anytime, please feel free to do so, because obviously we did this with you. So you can watch the video. So we've embedded the video for you to watch on your own. And so it might be helpful for you to watch it after I walk you through how we built it, because then it can help you when you're thinking about your own virtual event in terms of how everything sort of fits together and how you do everything. So I'm not going to, you have the link, you can watch it on YouTube, and please, if you like it and share it. Let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. So remember, so each one of these are intentionally colored. So we're showing you the different parts of the process, so that each color corresponds to the step in the process. So this is the event discovery. So what I'm going to share with you about this particular slide is for event discovery, we created a landing page on a platform called Everywhere Plus. And so on that landing page, we just had very basic information, and you could fill out your information to register for the event, which was a free event. And if you notice, the branding is very consistent, irrespective of whatever platform we're on, because we wanted to have a very seamless visual experience for people. And we actually combine the way that we came up with this brand look was combining the branding elements of all the different partners. So it didn't feel like one or another. It was like all of us combined in combination. So that was important. We also did social media posts, and we took existing photos and elements, and because it's Nelson Mandela University, we use Nelson Mandela quotes to sort of get people connected to the university and get interested in the event that we were doing. So we use so we market on different platforms. This was the landing page for the event when you actually did join us, but we'll add that. And then this is the LinkedIn marketing page for the event. Now, the funny thing that happened is, as we were marketing this event, LinkedIn changed the way that they do their links. And so what happened was, instead of you being able to sign up on the LinkedIn page and be able to go ahead and to sign up on the LinkedIn page and then go and easily register on where we needed you to register, which is the Everywhere Plus page, it actually puts you in a loop going back into LinkedIn. So we had to just kind of remind people using the photos from the LinkedIn page to let them know, like, this is where we need you to go. You can watch this. And so we kind of monitored that very carefully, because we didn't want to lose any of the 500 or so people who registered on LinkedIn. And then this is just, again, photos that we use. So we used existing photos and just added some other elements to make this for the particular event we were doing. With respect to registration and confirmation and reminder, once you sort of registered, then you received this email, which came from Kady, and it just, dear whoever, tells you a little bit about the event, how you're going to access the event, and if you had any questions or if any technical issues, who to contact. And then we sent a reminder email the day before, which not only reminded you about where you're going to watch the event and the time and all that, it also, we embedded a video from the university about what Nelson Mandela meant to the folks to their alumni, because we wanted people to already start thinking about what Nelson Mandela meant to them, so that when they came into this event, they could understand how the university is an expression of is the actual academic expression of Nelson Mandela, but also to connect the viewers to it, because a lot of folks, quite frankly, may not have known anything about the university, but they know something about Nelson Mandela, and they probably were excited about Nelson Mandela. So we wanted to create that excitement and that connection, really just even beginning in the video that was embedded in the final email that we sent to them. When they came to the event, again, you can watch this if you want to. This was the event landing page that they came to. Just give me 1 second. So they came to the landing page. So when you got in, this is what you'd see. You'd be able to watch the video here. We had different buttons that we designed here, and you can make this however you want. For people to learn more, this was a link to the KBFUS page, Network for Good page that we set up for people to sign up for the university's mailing list if they hadn't registered already using the mailing list. And then we had a meet and greet session or virtual kind of breakout session that they could use they could join here. And then this was the chat, and then this gave them the ability to do we integrated polls so people could respond to polls from us. So those are the different elements. As you can see, the branding is always at the top. We want to make sure that we gave our partners maximum visibility, and throughout this event. Next is the program experience. Remember, I told you everything is actually created like in great detail. If you look here, this is actually the visual layout of the event. This is this is a PowerPoint. This is not PowerPoint. This is a Google slide deck. And in this, we created this as the sort of the visual to communicate with the engineer who's going to manage the virtual platform for us. So we have the run of show. So everything detailed down to the minute. And then what we did is we had screenshots of what we wanted, people to be able to see at each point, and then which video we were going to tee up. So she knew which video to bring up. So we had the choir, so they could see the video. And then this is, you can't see it, but this is when Kady joins, and then she speaks, and then the tubas come on, so that the engineer knew exactly who needed to be on screen when, and when to add like the Slido poll, or when to bring a PowerPoint slide, or when to put a video. So very well, very, very detailed thinking that was put into this. If we move on, at the event departure, I'm gonna, I want, when you click on this, you're going to see Kady. Let me click on it anyway for you. Kady is going to
please reach out to me.
speak.
We'd love to work with you. And for U.S. donors who are interested in
what's important is Kady did the thank you, and we made sure that the thank you that they saw was in South African languages as well as French, because obviously this is a Belgian foundation, but again, to create that personalization for people. And then we ended up
and have donated and contributed so much. Thank you.
Kady, I'm not cutting off. I just want to quickly let them know. So we had the choir. What we never got to do and what we never. Again, this was a celebration, so they had an opportunity to go ahead and see that. And so we thought that was a fun way for people to connect with the university leaving. And then we made it easy for them to click here and end up in the breakout sessions, where they could choose if they wanted to be wanted to hear from folks from the university around entrepreneurship or alumni engagement or ocean sciences or social justice. And then you could just click here and join the group and have a live conversation on video with other people. So that was just an element. And then this is the Network for Good fundraising page that we designed, again, to feel very consistent with the event, so it didn't feel odd. So I highly encourage you to take a look at it and see if there are any ideas that you can take from it that you appreciate. Follow up.
Can I
yes
before you move
absolutely
on? I'm sorry, because I feel like you're being a little bit modest to seamlessly show the end product of what this event turned out to be, which was quite engaging. But I think maybe giving a one or two examples about the timeline, because this was a huge project, as I remember, the different campuses engaged, the different personalities, the different people, because I think as people go through the process of organizing an event, it is definitely something to keep in mind in terms of how do you navigate those challenges.
Right, sure. So I think the original conversation with Jean-Paul was in October of 2021. And then we engaged the university around this maybe in December of 2021. But the first meeting with everybody was, I think, the beginning of February, and the event was at the end of May. And it was pretty intense. Like, it wasn't like we worked on it sometimes, we worked on it quite a bit, being that we needed to be able to create videos to tell the story we were trying to tell. So first was helping to change the messaging for a more of a global audience. This university is terrific in terms of communicating to a South African audience, which makes sense because they're in South Africa. But the point of working with us was to help them to engage with a more of a global audience, and this event was part of that. And so we wanted to be able to speak to what the university is really awesome about, but not necessarily to an academic group and not necessarily to a South African one. So we needed to first create new messaging, so text, and then we felt that because South Africa is so far away, video and images were going to be very, very critical to connecting people to the university. So we worked with them to create short videos, and we integrated into the run of show of the event, so that even though it was a fireside chat and I interviewed the Vice Chancellor, we interspersed videos of faculty members. We had photos that we created of their different alumni and honorary doctorate recipients and the like, so that it was a fully integrated kind of an event. So it did really take a lot of time, and it required the coordination of probably close to 100 people who we needed to obtain a lot of different information from to make this happen. So to say it was a big effort, it was kind of like is the understatement of the year, but it was definitely worthwhile. Thanks, Kady. So follow-ups, we sent a thank you note with this young woman, which is, the iconic bench at the university with Nelson Mandela University. I just took a photo there myself in July, and I actually got nervous. I felt like I was actually sitting next to him. It was really funny, but so we just, thank them for coming to the event and summarize a little bit about what they've heard about the university, and then ask them to fill out a post-event survey, again with that thank you, integrating that thank you into this visually, and also inviting them to support the university. Very subtle. We didn't want, again, it wasn't like a hard sell, but we wanted to give them an opportunity to support however they wanted to. And then we shared on social media a little bit about the event, thank people for coming, and then just give them a link to watch the video at their on their own. And so that was really what we did for that. And then in terms of post-event report, we had a pretty comprehensive report, but this is just kind of the outline. We integrated the recording of the video. We acknowledged all the people who supported us and who were part of developing the event. And then we talked a little bit about the project objectives, and then we shared the evaluation of the project in terms of the numbers of people reached on different platforms and participants, and specific feedback were received, and then provided just kind of like that life cycle that I just shared with you of how the whole event came together, and then different elements that we created so that KBFUS as the client had that information, but the university also had it for its records. So that's virtual. Let's go into in-person very quickly. And I know I'm on time for my schedule, but we're a little bit behind in terms of the Q&A, but I want to share this with you. It's important for me to go into this. So I'm going to show you this video because this video is the recap of the event I want to show you. And it will explain to you why we did how we did. So like I said, you always think about the event in terms of as functioning for the future. And so this is a video that is, you can see on YouTube, that's basically a recap. And why these little kids are kissing this man is because that's the co-founder of the organization who actually passed away a few days after our event. And so we wanted to also make it as a tribute to him, this video. So that's why you see him. But let me share the video with you first. Can you hear? So, Kady, have you ever seen this video? Have I ever shown it to you before?
No, it's my first time. It's cute.
Okay, so thank you. So I think what I want to share with folks before we go into it, we had so if we think about like the process I showed you, what it was is, you know, we thought about, okay, what are our objectives? It was the first time that the organization was having a gala in the US, and it was about our third event that we held as when I was the CEO. And it was important to me that the event was held in a very nice venue because the people we're honoring included the former vice chair of the New York Stock Exchange and a pretty significant Wall Street person who'd supported the organization for many years, and that philanthropist that I told you about from Massachusetts. And so the venue was important, and I got a really great deal, so don't think we overspent the money. So that was one thing, but I also didn't want it to feel like any other event in New York. I wanted to say, okay, we're in this beautiful hotel, the St. Regis, but I wanted South Africa to be felt in different ways, and I want people to have a lot of fun. So that's why you notice we did the drumming, and so we had a company that came in and they drummed it on the stage, and we gave drums to all of the guests, which they never expected to see when we brought them to them, but they had fun. So there was like kind of like that playful element, and we made sure we had flowers like protea and things like that as part of the event, and all of our auction items were South Africa related. And even though we had to use the menu from the event, from the venue, we asked for them to have like rooibos tea, and we used South African wine, so at least we brought in that feeling that way. So that's just something I wanted to let you know. It was an event whereby we focused on sponsorships and tickets. So that's just a little bit of the sponsorship level, so you can see what we sort of offered. And then we had on the page, the way that we designed this was that we had a little bit of an overview of the event, and then the event, we had event hosts. Like I told you, you want to always have like a committee who we're honoring. And so we had the first honoree and the second honoree. And then when we gave the version of this invitation to June, we had her on the top and John on the bottom, so that, you know, that she could present it to her friends in the way she wanted to. And then we had the presenting sponsors, or the original sponsors, and then our leadership, the board of directors, and all the folks that are the key folks part of the organization, which we felt was really important to integrate into those pieces. So that's the discovery. We had an event, we had an online presence for the event in terms of the website. We didn't do any social media just because of the nature of the event. It wasn't that kind of event. It was mostly through email and then personal contacts and printed invitations. When people arrived, like I said, we had protea flowers. We made sure that the program also, we stuck the person's name and their table on one, so everything was efficient. And then we had a donation card in each one of those things. And then we had the sponsors probably displayed at the very beginning when you walked in. And why I'm here with these young people is it was very important to me that we bring 4 of our young people from South Africa to speak, and they were the honored guests. They were the VIPs. And in fact, this young woman, Gabby, is the one who spoke, because I felt that it shouldn't be me to talk about the organization. It should be them who benefit from the organization, because that's what ultimately people are interested in. So that's just something to think about with your organization, about who you center as the sort of the VIP in that event. In terms of in-person registration and check-in, I'm showing you from the African Tikkun event, but I also showed you a couple others for a reason. But with this event, these are all volunteers, including this woman who's my high school classmate. So the volunteers were excited to be part of something like this. So if there are people in your community who you think would be great or very hospitable, think about inviting them to participate in something like this. And then this is the event that I talked about with AMREF, the African Health Development Agency. This was at the Cornell Club. Again, you're in this sort of ballroom that's sort of very stiff New York kind of ballroom, but I wanted to add a little bit of an African element. And this is literally a piece of tie-dye fabric that's my own, and a milk pot from Uganda, and I think those are protea, so that we added a little bit of that African feel to it in a very subtle way. And then this is for the pink tie ball. You see there are lots of people who had to register, and they're even we even gave them ribbons so that they kind of felt and they all had to wear black, so they felt like part of the decor of the event. So just little touches you can think about. And I got to tell you something about registration. You have to have your list, your registration list, by alphabetical order. If you have tables, you want to do by table and maybe even by corporation, because you don't know how someone's going to come to you. And if you're going to have to search and search and search for their name and your lists aren't right, that's going to be a problem. So have that together, your list. And if you have name tags, get that done way in advance, because that's the thing that's going to slow you down, and it's going to make for a really horrible first impression in your event. So just think about that. Program experience, I already shared a little bit about how we integrated South Africa into it. You see Pam's having a great time doing the drumming over there. In the center, we worked with a company that provided us with pottery from South Africa. So while it was part of the decor, everything was up for auction. So we auctioned off all the pieces to the guests who were there. So they took those home, and they're beautiful bowls. This is another one of those elements. And then we were able also to, fortunately, receive a leather-bound copy of Nelson Mandela's Long Walk to Freedom, which we auctioned off for $10,000 because it's a limited edition from his 90th birthday. And then there you see Gabby speaking, again, centering her as the VIP guest or speaker. When people are leaving, just want to share with you, if you have the budget, or actually this is an event we did for Cornell University, and Baccarat donated wine glasses to us. So for our sort of VIP guests, we were able to give those to them. And then for Susan G. Komen, all breast cancer survivors who came to the event received these roses, and they're I guess they're called wristlets. And they didn't get them at the end, but they had them so that you could identify them within the venue. So they're special. And then this is from that event with AMREF, where they have bracelets that you've probably seen the bracelets many times, but this had an African feel to them. We wanted to give that vibe as well. Departure, we did a report as well, but here is an example of I think we did this in the newsletter. We shared what we raised from the event. It's very important that you send the the donation letters right away to whoever it is that supported you, because that's something you don't want to drop the ball on, and people are looking for them, and that means you have to be really on top of your accounting. And then these are just examples of photos from the Facebook album we created. So that's pretty much, you know, how you do it. Any questions that we have?
Not yet. You can also use your raise hand function, although.
Okay. So while you're getting the questions, I'm going to just show them the resources and I'll come back, you know, as you're getting the questions. So here's some resources that they have that I've given them. So they can come to our website. You can come to the International Social Impact website, Institute website, where you can see our schedule of events. So we have, most of our events are actually free because we find partners who can support the work, but also have a lot of resources in terms of resources from our partners, as well as just content that can be of use to you. And you can also learn about our services if you'd be interested in working with us. And then the Youth Giving Summit that I told you about is now Youth Giving. It's an initiative. And so you can learn about that. If you are working with young people, or if you yourself are under the age of 35 and want to learn a little bit about how we can, you know, actually watch the videos. The videos are available from the summit, but also learn more about what we're going to do with Youth Giving. So those are the websites, there's the social media for that. And then this is a link to the link tree that we set up for Youth Giving, where you can watch the videos and access a whole bunch of different things that might be of interest to you. Here are the UN days I was telling you about. So it's the days and weeks. So if you want to do something on January 24th, that's the International Day of Education. You can theme around that, or whatever it is that might be of interest to you. They're really great ways to do events. And then Canva. Canva is the thing that makes everything look beautiful, whether it's graphics for social media, for your website. We do everything in Canva. You can even edit video in Canva. And I've given you a link to the free Canva, which if you can prove that you're a nonprofit either in the US or in your country, so you show your registration papers, you can actually access Canva for free, which is huge, being able to use Canva for free. And then I wrote an article for Nonprofit Times last year about how to use LinkedIn as a marketing tool. And I talk a little about LinkedIn events and things like that. So I highly encourage you to read it. But like, as I mentioned to you, LinkedIn updated LinkedIn events. So I've given you the updated page on the specific piece of LinkedIn events. And LinkedIn events enables you to be able to market an event. I think some of you may have actually come in through LinkedIn events to market an event through LinkedIn, leveraging all of your contacts as well as those of the speakers in your network. It's a very good way for you to tap into a professional network, because that's the #1 professional network out there. So if the people who you want to attend your event are professionals, this is one of the platforms you want to be not only marketing your event, but potentially even streaming your event. And in fact, we streamed the Youth Giving Summit. We streamed to LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook, because the different markets or the different audiences we wanted to kind of reach out to were on those different platforms. So that's something to think about. Everywhere Plus is that event plus, that's platform I showed you that we used for the event with Nelson Mandela University that KBFUS hosted. So that you might want to learn about that, you can. And then if you want to do something with Giving Tuesday, if you don't know anything about Giving Tuesday, first of all, it's on November 29th, so you better start working on it. But it's the largest day of giving. And in fact, last year, just in the US alone, they raised $1.3 billion using Giving Tuesday. And Giving Tuesday just is a platform for you to use and create your own stuff. It's just a day, just like how I told you about the other days, but a lot of folks have become very familiar with it, and it's a way for you to activate your existing supporters, bring in some new folks as well. So I highly encourage you to learn more about Giving Tuesday, and they have a presence in 80 countries. So there might actually be a Giving Tuesday like local organization in your country that you can speak to, and they can give you free resources to create marketing content to rally your folks. So just want to bring that to you. And I want to say thank you to Jean-Paul and Kady for your continued partnership. Thank you to all of you in whichever country you're in and whichever language applies to you. And then thank you to my team who make it possible for me to be able to have this, to deliver this to you. So I'm happy to answer any questions that may have come up.
Absolutely. Thank you, Liz. We have one question from an anonymous attendee who wants to know what kind of follow-up should do people generally do post-event? What should they do in terms of follow-up?
Okay, what they do is none. Mostly. And I'll tell you, and actually, I'll tell you what happens. And I know exactly what happens. It's like, unless you set all this stuff in advance. And remember, how far in advance did we set up the thank yous, Kady? I think it was like
3 weeks or so.
Yeah, we had to set that up so that you're not having to do it in the last minute, because when you're doing last minute, it's going to fall through the cracks because everyone's tired that night, or when that event is over, you're like, I'm done, right? But you want to be able to follow up within the first 24 to 48 hours with at least a very basic thank you. Thank you for attending. And if you have, let's say if it's a virtual event, if you can do maybe a screenshot of the speakers, and maybe create like a nice little graphic with in Canva, then you can have that image in the email and you just write whatever text you want, whatever follow-up. So watch the video or join us again, whatever it is, but that's the very least you really want to do. If you have a survey, that might be something you may want to integrate in. We like to do social media posts as well, just because we do a lot of our stuff on social media, and it also helps to draw to bring more audiences to the work that we do. So it's just something to consider. And if it's an in-person event, not only do you want to send a thank you to everyone who attended, but you definitely want to send the donation letters to all of the tax letters to all of your donors. I think if you have donations through Network for Good, it's taken care of through that. But I would also say you want to add another layer of just a thank you from the organization directly. You can't say thank you enough, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Thank you is a very, very important thing, and it's a thing that people mostly drop the ball on. And if someone has given you a significant amount of money, you need to be calling, like your executive director or your board chair, whoever needs to be calling to thank directly, and maybe even invite them to do a debrief with you, whatever it may be. But it's very important that you do this piece correctly.
Absolutely. Thank you, Liz. I was just about to say what you already said in terms of personalizing the thank you. So nothing for me to add. We want to thank you again for being here. Again, apologize for the initial technical difficulty. We understand this is a lot of content. It's only scratching things on the surface. Liz is your go-to person for events. Please, please, please reach out to her. She has a brilliant mind that I'm still trying to figure out what it does. And so please reach out to her for these events. And if you're a nonprofit, you're in this room, want to know how we work, what are the services and how are they relevant for you, reach out to me. You have my contact. If you have a US donor that's interested in supporting your causes, but is trying to get tax benefits as well, I am the person that you should reach out to. Would be more than happy to help. But thank you for being here. All of our spotlighting, reach out to me and let's partner.
And reach out to her. She will be your advocate. I promise you.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you all for being here.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.